last but not least, diagnosis and treatment planning. This is the bulk of the exam. Again, just my opinion. All right, so let's go over what resources I would recommend. All right, for diagnosis, spoiler alert, I really liked Mosby's textbook, but specifically for diagnosis, chapters 4 and 6, I felt like were really helpful. Always identify things in their 3 planes of space for diagnosis and for treatment planning. So vertical, AP, and transverse. For treatment planning, I thought chapters 6 and 9 of Mosby's were very helpful. 3 planes of space. I know especially if you're doing like facial diagnosis and it's these 3 planes of space, sometimes I felt like I said like 20 things I just like blurted out. But as long as they're all correct or most of them are correct, some things come down to a bit of subjectivity, but you want to say the maximum amount of things that you can. And it'll sound like you're redundant and some of it will seem a bit repetitive. It should all be in bullet points. That's okay. You want to give the board information to score you on. If you only answer with like 2 bullet points, you're not going to have enough to show that you're proficient, and you won't have enough to match with their answers on. They're looking for a specific set of answers based on like, if you went through those example cases that I mentioned, you'll see that they don't just list 2 things. They usually list at least 4 things. So pay attention to that. Pay attention to how this exam is structured. As I said at the beginning, pay attention to the example cases and work from there. So always give at least 4 bullet points. I feel like specifically for an oral-based exam, you need to simulate the exam in some ways, and part of that is being verbal and articulating and then having somebody give you feedback afterwards. So if you find someone who's also taking the exam, you two can practice together. You can make practice cases. I mean, not all of your studying can be done together, but in this area, I feel like it'd be really helpful. And if I was talking to Brittany taking the exam and studying for the exam 3 months ago, this is what I would tell her to focus on. So I would recommend making practice cases using the study guide questions. There's like 40 questions in there. So you know what can and will come up, use it, okay? If you take the pre-treatment, extraoral, and intraoral photos, you can say, okay, you can put them in a PowerPoint or whatever, just send them to whoever your study buddy is and say, list all of the dental problems. There'll be a lot. There should not just be 4. There should be a lot of these. This is what the ABO is using to evaluate you. And you can say, describe the skeletal diagnosis in detail, always in those 3 planes of space. That helps you to organize it in your head so you don't miss anything, and it helps the ABO. I mean, I don't know for sure, but what I feel like when I'm trying to get into their minds is that also helps them organize scoring. So this is a great resource to use. Don't overlook what they've given you. Use your community. As Neil Kravitz says, we're colleagues, not competitors. Remember that. And if you're trying to make a friend to practice for this exam, I mean, we're all connected through the Facebook groups now. There's a lot of them: Orthodontic Pearls, Orthopreneurs, alumni groups based on your local area. Reach out. It's likely somebody else is trying to figure out how to study for this too, and you guys can help each other succeed. I had a study buddy from my co-resident group, or as I call it, my family, and her and I were study buddies, and we both passed. People are constantly posting complicated cases, and they'll post great records, sometimes not so great records, but a lot of times great records, and you can use these to study from. OrthoTown, same thing. I would just go in and search, and cases would come up. I would take the screenshot and I would send them to her and ask her some domain questions. That I felt like was really helpful, and I'm trying to pass that on to other people so that, the more of us who pass the ABO exam, the better it is for us as a specialty. So make practice cases using the records and study guide questions, and review them alone if that works best for you, or with your buddy. Okay, and lastly, that brings us to tips and tricks. So these are just kind of my last words of advice for you. Time management, this is something that I didn't realize till I was in the exam. There were some times where I was really at the buzzer to give all the information, because it does take time to sit there, to listen to the question or read the question and analyze the records and formulate your answer. So definitely keep that in mind as you're studying, that this is not unlimited time. It's 18 minutes per room, 4 to 5 questions. So that means that there's no more than 3 minutes on a question total. That includes listening to the question, that includes analyzing the records and formulating your response, and even if you were going to go back to it at the end. So that's 3 minutes total. And I'm telling you, that 3 minutes goes by like that. So this is definitely something that you want to keep in mind as you're studying. The second point is that the examiners cannot respond, especially for someone who might be a little bit more social like me. This was a point of awkwardness where I was like, oh, they're not going to respond. It's on you to decide that it's time to move forward. No one's going to say, okay, that's it. You're the person who says that. So definitely have to go in there with a certain amount of confidence that you've given the bullet points to the answer that make your answer proficient. And get used to the fact that you're not going to get any further clarification if you don't, understand the question, which shouldn't be an issue because you've practiced the domain question so much, but there will be no chance for clarification. And lastly, and maybe most important, give yourself time to prepare. This is an exam. A lot of you are excellent clinicians, but you have to remember that this is still a test, and that takes knowing the structure of the exam, especially this one, which is a little bit different than the other ones we've taken during dental school and residency. And you want to really set yourself up for success. I don't ever recommend winging an exam, but this exam in particular is not one I would recommend to go in cold. So definitely set yourself up for success. Okay, so that's all I have. Hopefully it was helpful. It's really just, I separated it into the skills that I thought were necessary for this exam, and then what resources I used and thought were helpful for acquiring those skills. So, hopefully some of you thought it was helpful, and if you do, then I'll be so happy. That's really what my goal was with this, because I remember being in that spot, looking for resources and what things were good, and this is what I would have wanted to have. So hopefully it helps some of you. And just remember that we are one big ortho community and that everybody's looking for you to succeed. So don't be afraid to rely on your network, rely on your community, and I wish you the best of luck, and thanks for watching.